Hey, it's Brian from Eastwood, and we're back with another update on Project Sunny. Last time we checked in, we'd removed the engine and transmission from the chassis and tore the engine down to the bare block so we could start overhauling and refinishing it. But before we got too far ahead of ourselves, we decided to shore up the chassis first. After all, we needed to make sure we had a solid frame to put that fresh engine back into once it's rebuilt. So just like the body before it, we got to work stripping off every component from the frame that wasn't welded to it. That included removing the axles and steering hardware, as well as the suspension arms and anything else that was bolted in place. With the frame down to its bare essentials, we needed to start by removing the rust, grime, and whatever was left of the original paint. This began with power washing the frame to degrease it. Then we turned to our 50-pound pressure blaster and several bags of Epix blasting media. Now, we chose Epix because it works like aluminum oxide, but it's slightly less aggressive and considerably less expensive. It's just a great all-around media for this type of project. We strapped the bare frame down to the cart that we had previously used for the body and then rolled everything outside to prevent making a mess in the garage. Rolling it onto a plastic tarp allowed us to easily sweep up and reclaim the spent media to get additional use out of it. We simply sifted out the sweepings to remove any unwanted debris and reloaded it into the blaster for another round. The nozzle we chose for blasting was on the smaller side, allowing us to concentrate on areas where there was more severe rust. This also gave us a narrow pattern for working in tight corners and inside some of the welded-on brackets. In hindsight, a larger nozzle would have been quicker for stripping the larger areas. We used a 6, I probably would have gone closer to a 10. All told, it took us about a day and a half to strip the frame to bare metal using this method, stopping every 20 minutes or so to reload the hopper with media. From here, we brought it back inside to assess the work, where we discovered a few areas that needed additional blasting. Working in direct sunlight just made it difficult to see several places that we'd missed. We set up some protective sheeting in the garage and used a spot blaster to finish stripping the frame inside. Now we could assess the true condition of the frame. Not surprisingly, we'd opened up some previously unseen rust once the grit was flying. Several lower spots on the bottom of the frame required minor repairs with plug welds. For these, we used the step bit in our plug weld kit to cleanly open up the rust holes back to the point of good metal. We tacked in these sheet metal plugs to fill the holes accordingly, and then came back to seam weld them for a solid repair. A couple of spots required more extensive rust repairs. Even before we'd removed the body from the frame, we knew a section in the right rear had rusted through from the top, the result of water leaking out of the body and pooling on a low dip in the frame. However, we were surprised to see similar rust through on the left side inner rail about halfway down, where a bolt-in cross member attaches. Water had clearly collected where these two components come together, allowing part of the frame to rot away out of sight. That's why it's important to take everything apart. In the case of these damaged spots, larger patch panels were required. For these, we cut rectangular patches out of 14-gauge steel plate, the same thickness as the original frame. The patch for the rear section required a slight arc to be bent in it to match the frame profile. We used our hydraulic shop press to create a series of gentle bends that eventually lined up perfectly. For the side rail near the center, we first welded in a reinforcement bracket inside the frame to add some vertical bracing. It was probably overkill, but we went ahead anyway for good measure. Once that was in place, we tacked the patch panel to the bracket and then seam welded it closed. After grinding down and cleaning up all our welds, we were ready for the next phase, internal frame coating. But first, there was a lot of debris inside the frame to blow out. In addition to the abrasive media that found its way into all the openings during blasting, we also discovered rodent nesting material packed into the corners of the frame. Several sessions of blowing compressed air into every possible opening got most of it out as far as we could tell. When we cut out those larger sections for repair, we were a bit surprised to see the frame was actually protected from inside at the factory, presumably dipped in an E-coat primer for full protection. While we weren't going to be able to completely reproduce that, we could at least coat the inside of the frame with an aerosol protective coating, concentrating on the areas we knew were already prone to rust. Eastwood's internal frame coating is applied with a special tip that sprays in a 360-degree pattern to reach virtually everywhere it travels. We went ahead and used the upgraded heavy-duty 2-foot hose. This is more rigid than the standard hose that comes with it, allowing it to more easily push the applicator deeper into the frame and pull it along during spraying. As you can see, the frame coating seemed to get just about everywhere on the inside. We used a total of 2 cans to get through this project, and that was a perfect amount. Internal frame coating is available in either a black or green finish, and while the original frame was actually a black finish, I chose to go with the green because we were spraying in small cavities and I wanted to make sure I could see where the material was actually being applied. We let this set up for a couple days to dry before coming back to continue on the outside of the frame. Before we could prime the frame, we needed to chemically prepare the bare metal for maximum adhesion. This meant acid etching the frame with fast etch to remove any flash rust that may have formed, as well as any rust that might still be lurking in unseen pits or crevices. Fast etch gives the bare metal a mildly toothy surface for the primer to adhere to. It also leaves behind a gray phosphate coating that prevents flash rust from returning in the short term. We worked section by section, spraying fast etch onto the frame, scuffing it with a mild abrasive pad, and then neutralizing the acid with Eastwood's pre-painting prep. This required working in 2 phases, flipping the frame over to capture both the top and bottom surfaces. Finally, after all that, the frame was ready for primer. Because this is part of a cosmetic restoration and not just a functional repair, we chose to go with a 2-part epoxy primer instead of using something like rust encapsulator. Either one would have worked here, but we preferred the epoxy option for this particular project. This will give us a great foundation for body filler should we decide to smooth out some of the rough pitting left behind, as well as for the 2K chassis black that will eventually be used for the top coat. Normally, we might spray the epoxy primer onto the frame, but that would require that we set up our inflatable paint booth first. Instead, we chose to use Eastwood's OptiFlow primer, a specially developed roll-on primer. This eliminates the opportunity for overspray, making for a clean application in your home garage or, as it turns out, a busy video studio like ours. We stirred the primer really well to get all the solids mixed in, added the activator, and poured it all into a conventional paint rolling tray. Rolling on was quick and straightforward. For a project like this frame, the small foam rollers were perfect for laying down an even coat on the larger surfaces, while using the tip to dab in most corners and recesses. For even smaller, tighter spots, foam brushes got the job done. Of course, not every surface can be reached this way. After letting the frame dry overnight, following its roll-on application, we flipped it over to see where we'd missed. Predictably, there were bare spots in certain recesses like inside the spring perches and under some smaller brackets. We used a single can of 2K aerosol epoxy primer to touch up these missed spots. And that's where it stands right now. The frame is completely primed on the outside with epoxy and covered on the inside with internal frame coating. The generous application of the epoxy primer filled in a lot of the surface texture we were first worried about, meaning we may not even bother with smoothing things out with body filler. From here, we'll get the frame finished with our low-gloss 2K chassis black paint and get the rest of the suspension and driveline components refinished to match so we can put it all back together. Until then, you can check out more regular project updates at eastwood.com/garage. Just type Project Sunny in the search bar to see detailed articles of the work taking place in between the video episodes. And for more information on the products featured in this video, check out the links in the description below. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to Eastwood's YouTube channel while you're down there. And don't forget to hit the bell to get notified of new videos as they come out.